This morning, we're going to take a deep dive into the transformation of our brand 2.0. Okay? And we're going to do that in 4 parts. If we can get my slides up, please. So we'd like to cover this morning is how we're going to transform the brand. We're going to cover 4 things. I'm going to start by giving you a fairly high-level overview of why it's important that we evolve our brand from where it is to where it needs to go. Following that, John Long is going to come up, and he's going to explain to you exactly the laser focus of how we're going to get tighter in positioning the definition of our brand, and why it's important for you to understand how it is that we're going to take that laser focus and apply it to everything that we do. Thank you. Third, Linda Wilcon is going to come up, and she's going to explain the entire experience that our customers are going to explore when they encounter Cricut, and how the brand will be applied to the entire experience, not just the product. Let's start with why. The why is fairly simple. As one of the themes of this conference, we're about ready to take the national stage. And that requires that we start thinking like we're a national player. If we want to be a national brand, let alone a good or great, or let's really aspire and say a world-class brand, we have to start beginning to act like a national brand. As Al had mentioned, we are in a maturation process, from being adolescents and maturing to adulthood. Now, as you all know, it's fun to be an adolescent. It's focused on me, doing what I want to do. I don't have to worry about the rest of the world. Unfortunately, when you become an adult, you have to think about some more serious things. This is true, too, of our brand. We have had sort of the liberty and luxury of sort of growing our brand in a very entrepreneurial spirit. We don't want to lose that. But as we become more national, we have to apply a more laser focus to the definition of what our brand stands for. We have to apply a little more discipline and rigor to how we manifest that in everything that we do, every action. And most importantly, we have to start working together better. We can't have everyone taking their own definition of the brand and trying to manifest it its own way. Otherwise, we don't harness the power of a national Cricut brand. Number 1, you have to understand, as you've heard a couple times today, that a brand is the truth of a promise. I'll come back and talk about that in a minute. The brand is the truth of a promise. Number 2, we all have to share one common understanding of what the brand is. We can't manage a brand if we don't share a common understanding of what it is we're trying to manage. Number 3, as I just started to mention, and most importantly, the brand is not owned by the marketing department. The brand is owned by every function and every employee. If you think the brand is somebody else's job, if you think the brand is only advertising, if you think the brand happens only by the merchandising, we will not be managing the brand as carefully as we can. Everybody has a role in managing the brand. Number 4, this may be the hardest one. Business policy is brand policy, and brand policy is business policy. Okay, that's Scott using that crazy marketing talk. What do I mean? Each and every one of you gets to make a decision every day in your jobs about what you do. And typically you think about those decisions as business decisions. Do I go left? Do I go right? Do I spend more? Do I spend less? What I'm asking you to do as you contemplate those decisions is ask a second question. Not only is the decision I'm about to make good for the business, but is it also on-brand or off-brand? Is the decision I'm about to make good for the brand and the business, not just for the business? And the reason why we ask you to think about that is because you can make a great business decision that might be terrible for the brand. Conversely, you can make a great brand decision that might be terrible for the business. Neither are right. It only works when we put the two things together. Every decision has to be made together. And number 5, creating a Cricut Symphony. I mentioned before Is it on brand? Is it off brand? But it only works if all of us do it together. If some of us go one direction and the other of us go another direction, it won't matter that we're so focused on what's right about the brand or not about the brand. We've got to make sure that we all do it together in unison. And we'll talk more about that. Okay? So 5 requirements for how each and every one of us can become brand management. You may not know this, but you will read about it in the book, in the Brand Matters book. But when they were putting together the company and they thought about the name Cricket, part of the reason why they thought about the name is that crickets, the insects themselves, are musicians. Crickets are musicians. And when a bunch of crickets get together, what do? They make a sound. They make a noise. They make a symphony. And part of the reason why we picked the name is because they wanted to create a symphony of sound. Okay? So what happens is, if each of you represents, I'm going to use the analogy of an orchestra. If each of you represents a musician playing a different instrument, it only works if you play the music together. If each of you are really good at playing your instrument, but you want to play different notes, it sounds random. Let me give you an example. Can you play the first audio track? How'd that sound? It's not to say that we can't have some freedom in how we execute, but we've got to define a common sandbox and agree that we're going to play in that sandbox, because if we don't, we're going to be all over the place. And what I'm trying to say is, as we were younger and growing up, being all over the place may have been okay. But as we take the national stage and we compete with guys who have been doing this for a long time with a lot of money, that's just not going to work anymore. You cannot be great if we're that unorchestrated. So instead, what I propose is that we actually become a cricket symphony. See? That's it, guys. That's great. That's great. If you want to be great, and we want to be great, we got to do that. If you want to go off and play your random notes, we can't be great. It's as simple as that, okay? So we got to be a symphony, and we got to play together. The last thing is, we probably have never had in our company's history so clearly defined a common score and playbook. So that happens because they have a score. The notes were thought about how they're put together, and they rehearsed and they practiced and they got disciplined. In these 2 books now, we have articulated our score, our playbook, our symphony. This is one common understanding that we will share with all 3,500 employees. So when you understand the score and the playbook, which is in front of you, and we get all 3,500 employees to follow the same playbook, to start working together and playing together, we will, in fact, create a great cricket symphony and a great brand.